All right, so let's get started building out our project manager here. Now, I am building out one for my personal projects. I already have one for my client projects. And I want to keep these separate because there are different ways that I will tie into my other databases. For example, I will tie into notes for different reasons, I'll tie into calendar for different reasons, and I'll probably even utilize a few others like my daily log. And so there's different things that I will tie in to this that I wouldn't tie into my other project manager for client projects. So we're starting out with a brand new page. I just simply clicked plus here to add a new page. You can see it's an untitled page, and I'm going to call this My Projects. Now, I typically add an icon. I'll go in and customize this later. I like to have an icon and maybe like a little cover photo or something like that up here. And so I'll choose these later. I'll just leave them at the default right now. So when you choose the type of database, and I've mentioned this in other videos, these different database types don't really matter. They are essentially different database views, and yes, they come with a little bit of different information when you click on them, but these are just different database views, and once you've created the database, you can go in and customize your view. When I build out a database, I typically start out with the table style database because for me that just makes it a little bit easier to just go down the line, adding columns to the database, and then I will customize my views differently for a board view, maybe for a calendar view, even a gallery. And sometimes I have a use for a list view if I want something pretty minimal. So let's go and click on table. So now we have our page with a table built into it. You can see we've got 3 empty entries in our database. So we're going to leave the name here. The name is what we're going to name our project. So I could easily just click in here and call this sample project. And it's not anything yet. It's not a page. It's just an entry in the database. It's not a page until I open it and I start to add content to it. So now we have tags and files, which I'm going to leave, but we're going to mess with these a little bit later in this tutorial, so I'll just shrink them down. So the first thing that I will add, because we're going to add a bunch of columns here, some of these columns are going to have to do with this database, and some of the columns are actually going to relate to other databases and bring in entries from other databases. So I'm going to click on plus, and the first thing that I'm going to add is a created date. I like to have a created date in there because that way I know exactly when I added this, and that can be nice to know when you added it. It can also be frustrating. And so you can see it shows the date and the time and everything here. And I don't necessarily need the time on there per se, but it's there and it's the way that it is. I would like to be able to remove some of that, maybe even just make this take up less space by having it be just a number system and that's it, but that's fine. I typically put this one way at the end and it's even out of view. I just like having it there so that I can look and see when I added it. And then of course when you are viewing the project in a page, you can see all of that information here. I'll typically even move created all the way down to the bottom. Another one that I like to add is updated. This is a date that will automatically change when I go into a page and edit something. So last edited time, I can add that one in there, and we'll just shrink that one down. You can see it also makes it taller if you shrink it down too much, which I would rather it just run off the edge, but that's okay. We'll reorder this a little bit. You can see they all have the exact same times and all of that stuff, but if I come in here and I, type in a tag, and then now it's updated, and so I can see that it updates the actual time. That's basically why I wanted that there, so that way I know when the last time it is that I dipped into that project and changed something and made a little bit of an update. So the next thing that we need to add is a priority. It's important to be able to prioritize these things and stuff, because these tasks and projects, if they don't have a priority, we're not 100% sure how important they are, and especially if you have a lot of them in here. Priority is important. Sometimes things are lower priority and sometimes they're higher. So typically I will put like high, medium, and low, and I will change the color of them to kind of coincide. I also like to maybe add like a little emoji, like a fire emoji at the end or something like that, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So we'll add in medium, and then we'll add in low. And so these typically, medium, low, I could put medium as like a yellow, I guess. We could just change these colors just to do it. So yellow and then low, green. We'll just leave them like that. So now we have our priority in there, and I'll shrink this column down and move it all the way over. The next is status. Status is important because we're going to use this to be able to know where we're at with the project, but also have it hide itself later on when it is completed so that we can take it out of our view. We don't need to see all of our completed projects in our current working view. So I'm going to choose this as a select option as well. And the difference between the select option and the multi-select is that select only allows you to choose one. Obviously, if there's a status or a priority, those can be select because we don't have like multiple priorities or multiple statuses. You're either working on it or you're not, and it's either a high, medium, or a low priority. So we're just going to leave the status like that. I'm going to move that one all the way over here to status, and I will add some statuses. So let's put not started, or I guess I could say new. We'll add new. We'll add in progress. We'll add on hold, and I'll add completed. I could even add, let's add archived. That's something I've been doing lately is sometimes if a project is completed, I would like it to still show up in here, but maybe I don't want it archived yet because I still need to jump into it for something, which I guess would mean that it's still in progress, but nonetheless, that's just the way that I've been setting it up lately. I can customize these colors. I'm not going to waste your time with that right now. We'll just go ahead and leave those as they are. So now I have kind of everything that I would want in there with the exception of relational databases. Another date that you could add is a due date if you wanted to add a due date, like a specific date that you wanted to have this project completed. To do that, I could put like due and then choose the actual date. So instead of these advanced options down here that automatically update, we would want to put a date that we would choose. And so maybe I would put this here, and then I can choose the date in which that I want that to be completed. And so I can slide that over. So now we've got a bunch of dates, which may or may not be something that you're into. But for me, it's nice to have this information here so that it's automatically updated for me. Okay, so now we're going to add in a couple of related databases that we're going to be able to talk to or kind of tie between. And depending on the databases that you have, you may want to add them so that you can mention projects in other databases. So for example, if I was in my notebook, and I wanted to add a note in because it had to do with a project, I could actually add a note in and then tag the specific project, and then it would be an entry in my notebook. So I need to add the related database for that. So I'm going to go ahead and click plus, and I'll put notes or notebook here because there is another option that I'm going to add in for kind of adding a note. And then we will go to relation, and then I will go to select database and type in notebook, or notes, I guess, because that's the name of the database. And so I'll create that relation, and you can see that it is right here, and I can move this over to there. So I want the due date. I'm going to keep the due date over here a little bit because these two are going to run off the end of the columns here off of the screen, and that's fine because this information here is not something that I'm going to need to look at all the time. I will want to see this information over onto the left, so you can see that on the left-hand side of this database, these columns I want to be my more important columns, things that I want to see more often, and then off to the right are less important. So let's go ahead and add in, I'm going to add in my daily log because a lot of times I am like talking about things that I'm working on in my daily log, especially my own personal projects. So we'll type daily log and click on that, create relation, slide this one over a little bit, And there we go. Now these I can make relatively small, and when there is an entry in here, it will actually just truncate it. It won't bring it down to an additional line or make this really large. I'll show you exactly what that looks like pretty soon here. But I just keep those small because I don't need to see the full information there. So now I would maybe want to add a calendar entry, because the interesting thing about linking this up to my calendar, my master calendar, is if I am calendar blocking, which sometimes I do, I can enter into the calendar the project that I'm going to be working on for the specific amount of time and then link it up to an actual project. So I would type in calendar, choose relation, select database, master calendar. And then lastly, of course, I want to link this up to my tasks list as well. When I add specific tasks, I want them to be linked up to a project. So we'll go ahead and add in a link to my tasks. All right, so now you can see we've got a pretty decent little database built out here. I did mention that I was going to talk about tags and files. So tags might be another way of categorizing, like the type of project. Maybe you have different projects in different areas of your life. So for me, I definitely do. I have not sample projects. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that one because we don't need it now. But I will put household in here because I'll have household projects. I'll have personal projects. And typically, if I was talking about things that I was working on in any other type of database, I would call them like my projects. So let's just go and colorize these. We'll do personal and we'll do household. And these allow you to have multiple, and so you can choose multiple. This is a multi-select, and so I can choose two different areas. So maybe this is a project that's both personal and household. Of course, I put the word person in here, and I need it to be personal. So I can add in multiple. That's important because sometimes we do have things that kind of cross into different areas. And I'm actually going to change tags to areas because these are different areas of my life, I guess, and so I can add these in. I can improve upon this too by adding in more. There are different areas of my life besides household and personal and work and stuff, and so sometimes there might be a project that is a project I consider my own project that is for work or is for something else, maybe educational or learning. So I could build this out and just expand upon it as I feel needed. Files is good because I can add files here. Of course, when we go into the actual page, we can add files down below into the page. But one of the reasons that I like having a files entry in the actual structure of the database is so that any files that I need access to that are like core files are easily accessible right here. And I'm also looking down the road as if I ever want to export this database into something else, this is going to export as a spreadsheet that is importable into something else. And when I import it into something else, any files that are tied to that project, I want to be right here. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to upload every single file that's related to this project to this section. This would just be kind of core important files. Anything that is maybe less important or whatnot can go down into the page, and that's just a personal preference. It's not necessarily the right way to do it. It's just the way that I'm doing it right now, because I think a lot of us are kind of looking at how can we use Notion in the best way so that maybe in the future, if I do need to export something, I can. But not many of us have really had to do that too often. And I don't think there are many applications that allow you to import stuff from Notion anyway. So, all right, so while we're looking at this view here, let's clean this up because we've definitely got this view cleaned up. But when we look at the actual entry, it's kind of a mess. So we're going to go ahead and put created down at the bottom. We can put our priority up towards the top and our status. We'll move that up. Let's put, priority up at the top is good. We'll move areas here. We'll move the due date up. Now we've got our different entries here. I might move tasks up a little bit and just leave those. So that looks pretty good. I like the order of those there. And that will be the order of everything from here on out when we view any page. So this is basically how I build out that database. So now if I was going to go into my calendar, so let's go into my calendar, and today is the 27th. You can see my calendar just looks awesome thanks to where our world currently is right now with the kids out of school and everything basically canceled. But I'm going to go ahead and add in a calendar entry today. So work on project manager, and I'll add in a time. So let's just say I was going to work on this today at 10 a.m. And there's that, and I can add in a note about this. I can choose, and this is my calendar now. This is not the project manager. So we'll call this my projects, and I can choose work or whatever. And you can see here that there is related to my projects in here now. Now I want to change this so that it doesn't have this long entry. I just want it to say my projects. And so let's go ahead and change the name of my projects. And now I can actually relate this to the sample project that we created. We'll click on plus. And so now that is here. We tagged it in this calendar entry. So you can see in my calendar entry, we have work on my project manager here. But if we go back to my projects, you can see it actually added it. And I may have mentioned earlier that it just runs off. It doesn't actually that it actually truncates. And for whatever reason, it's not doing that right now. It has done it in some of my other views. I guess maybe I do need to add like a custom view or something in order for that to take place. But it is doing that. Nonetheless, not a big deal. So now that you've seen how to relate an item, because I can do that now if I add a task or if I add a notebook, and I can also add it here as well. So I can click in here and I can add this task. So I could say record tutorial video, and I can add that as a task. And so now that's a task that's actually going to show up in my task manager. And I can even add a daily log or a notebook entry here, but I can really only add in the title. But what's cool now is if I click on it and I go and visit it, now I am in a task. And so I can choose my task. This is a high priority. It's a video that I want to put out. It is in progress. The due date I will put for today. The area, I'll put my projects. So now you're looking at my task manager here. So we'll go ahead and choose photo or video because that's what I'm creating. And you can see here it says related to my project. I do also need to go and change this to just my projects. So we'll go ahead and do that. And I'll just move this up in the list a little bit. And so you can see how we're tying this all together now. So now I can be viewing the project. If there's a tasks related to it, I can go and view them in my tasks manager. So that way I can still see all of my tasks that are related to that specific project. And this is going to grow a lot as I add more. And so because this view is not, looking that great, I may want to go and add an additional view. So I do apologize at this point in the video, like the just cohesiveness of this video is falling apart a little bit, but I hope that you are able to follow along. So I would like to add a board view. A board view is going to give me a better way of looking at all of these items based on where they are at. So right now it's showing them by priority, grouped by priority, but I may want to actually group by status and view the status. This is typically where I would want it to be. Now the no status is one that I probably wouldn't use, so I would hide it. I would want new, in progress, on hold, completed, and archive to show. So that way if I am in my default view here and I change some statuses, so let's just, for the heck of it, add in these additional ones here, and let's add a status of on hold and in progress for these. And we go and view our default view, or our board view, sorry, you can see that we've got them now in their different categories, which is kind of nice. Now you can also customize the information that shows up in the view here by going to right here and clicking properties. Now I don't necessarily need to have the created time there, maybe even the updated time. I would want the priority there. You can also reorder these, by the way. Status, areas, yes. Files, no. Due date, yes. And I can turn off all of these other relational items that are added here. And so that way I can view the due date of this project. I can view what category. Well, actually, I don't even need to have the status because the status is already there in the column. So let's just go ahead and turn the status off because we don't need that repeated. And so now you can see we've got a nice little view here that is different than this kind of data-centric view here. So default view, board view, we can also go with a calendar view, and we can view by due date. So we've got a calendar view here. We want to, of course, view by the due date. We want to make sure that's selected. We can also choose any of the other date items here. So you can see we've got the project, that sample project that is due on the 31st. Maybe we want to see some additional properties there, so we can go ahead and turn on areas, and we could turn on priority and status just to kind of see that information. And of course, any of these that we do have information for are going to show up. So that is a way that we can view everything on a calendar. And once we get a lot more projects added, we could start to see them throughout the calendar, which might be kind of a fun way of viewing all of your stuff. So of course, there is also a gallery, which could be kind of a fun way to view your stuff as well. We'll type in gallery, and you can see these are fairly blank because there's no images associated with them, and the view is not that exciting right now. But we can change the card preview to a different view. For example, if you don't want an image, so let me just show you here. So if we add a cover image to this, then that cover image can show up right here, and we have to have the option turned on for that. So if we have page cover turned on, that image will show up, and then we can add in status and priority, and we can reorder those just like any of the others. And of course, that shows up that way. If you don't care about having the page cover there, you can go to none, and it just shows a nice little card. Pretty simple. And these are going to be in a basic order of created, I'm sure. We can also go and add a sort by due date. We could choose due date, ascending or descending, and so that's kind of nice. So ascending meaning soonest first to furthest away, or we can choose the other way around. And then, of course, we can also filter them out. So, for example, if we didn't want archived ones to show here, we could choose add a filter, choose the status, and then we could choose archived. Status is not archived, and then this shows all the ones that are not archived. We can also do that to our default view, which I would probably change the name of this one to all projects. But then I would probably duplicate this or create another view just like it. We'll go ahead and create another table, and we'll title this one current projects. And with current projects, I would want to then add a sort of due date, or probably priority. Well, you can add multiple. So let's do date ascending, and let's also add priority as well. Of course, because only one of them has priority, that's how it's going to work. Any ones that don't have priority are going to show up towards the bottom. So also I can add a filter, and so we'll add filter, and we'll choose status is not, and we'll choose archive. So it's not going to show archived. So under current projects, if I changed this one to archive, it's going to disappear. But then if I go to all projects, you can see it's still there, which is really nice. So current projects, you can see what I mean now that I created another view. It's actually just allowing these to run off the side, which means the database isn't going to get so tall, which I kind of like. I could also reorder these. Current projects is where I'd probably spend most of my time. I can also maybe go to board view as well. Board view is another one that I would want to change and maybe remove archived from, because after a while archived is going to get pretty long, but it's up to you how you want those views to appear. So this is my project manager, and this is where I'm going to spend most of my time adding in some new projects. So I'll go in now and just delete out all of these sample projects just to kind of clear everything out that I had in there, and I can start adding in new projects. So I'm currently working on a WordPress, updating my WordPress for Beginners course. So I would add that. I'm also going to be updating my Ditch Auto photography class, which is a class on getting out of auto mode and shooting in manual mode. So I might add that as well. That also might be an area that I might update. Probably put in courses and add that in. So now you can go in and start utilizing your project manager to organize all of your personal projects. Or, of course, you can also use this as a project manager for anything. So I hope that you enjoyed it. If there's anything you'd like to add, please share that with me down in the comment section below. Thanks so much for checking out this tutorial. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and I hope to see you back in the next one. Take care.